Will you follow me when the sky starts to change? Yeah, we won't be afraid. We'll never be the same again.
You're streaming with the Fantasy Follow. It's week 10 of fantasy football. We're ready to go, getting you ready for a big day of football action, and it starts right now. It's a big day of football. You can do this. Make those good decisions. There's never a better time than this week. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Follow. This is the TFF Live Sunday pregame show. We're here getting you started and ready for week 10. Hopefully making your way towards the second half of this fantasy football season, moving towards your playoffs. and hopefully ultimately that fantasy football championship. Of course, as every week, we are here for your live chats. Looking forward to talking some fantasy football with you guys today. Drop us a chat at any time during the show. Even if we are doing other content, we will get to your chats. As always, as we always say, we would rather than just talking to you, we'd rather be talking with you. So drop us some live chats. If you're watching on replay, leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts about any of the stuff that we talk about throughout today's show. But either way, let's get right into it. We will start off with a look back at Week 9, taking a look at what these players did for you last week as we look forward to potentially another great week for a lot of these guys. At the quarterback spot last week, it was Lamar Jackson leading the way, 32.60 fantasy points, 266 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and 120 yards on the ground. Justin Herbert in second with 31.60 fantasy points. Matt Ryan in third, 28.50. Josh Johnson in fourth, 25.50. Josh Johnson looks like it's going to be Mike Davis today for the Jets. And then Carson Wentz with 24.20 fantasy points. That was the quarterback top 5 from last week. Over at the wide receiver spot, Elijah Moore, a popular potential name off the waiver wire this week for the Jets, led the way last week for all the wide receivers, 27.40 fantasy points. That was 84 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. Devontae Smith for the Eagles, 22.60. Keenan Allen for the Chargers, 22.40. I practiced this name, and you know what? Olamide Zaccheaus, whatever. It's something like that. I don't know. He had 3 catches, and he made the top 5 at 20.80. Either way, I had to pronounce his name. I probably got it horribly wrong, but I don't know. Who knows? Olamide Zaccheaus, something like that. Marquise Brown running up the top 5, 20.60 for Hollywood Brown. Over at the running back spot, it was James Conner. We'll see what Conner does this week, and we'll see if Eno Benjamin for the 49ers gets any play after, unfortunately, the injury to Chase Edmonds. Conner last week, 40.30 fantasy points. We're keeping an eye on a lot of players for the Cardinals today. We'll talk about that once we get to the inactives. Jonathan Taylor last week in second, 34.40, continuing a great year. Nick Chubb in third, 30.30. Chubb out today to protocols. Joe Mixon for the Bengals, 28.00. And then Nyheim Hines for the Colts, 20.80, rounding out the running back leaders from last week. Over at the tight end spot on a hot streak last week, Pat Freiermuth from the Steelers, 21.30. Hopefully looking forward to hearing from Cash Money Wilson today, one of our regulars who is attending the Steelers Lions game. So hoping if Cash Money is watching on his phone while he's tailgating there, we'd love to hear some thoughts from him. Looking forward to that game. George Kittle last week in second for San Francisco, 20.10 fantasy points. Travis Kelce always up there, 17.80. Darren Waller, 16.20. And then rounding out the leaders was Cole Kmet for the Bears at 14.70. Those were your top players from Week 9 of fantasy football. As we look forward now to Week 10, let's get right in the chats to get things going. Look at this. I got my Sonic cup straw right in the shot this whole time. What are we doing here? Like just professional live streaming right here at its finest. Let's get to the comments, get things going for today. Starting out here with Jonathan Lee, first one in the chat today. Welcome back, one of our regulars, Jonathan Lee. You got a question for us today. Pick 4, Cordell Patterson, Daryl Henderson, Stefan Diggs, Michael Pittman, Deebo Samuel, half PPR. Keep up the good work. Appreciate that, Jonathan. Again, we'll get to the actives and actives shortly. A lot to talk about there, but we'll get a couple of chats in first on the early chats here when I get you guys rolling. Again, the live chat is open all stream, but I said this before, and the more chats we've been getting on the Sunday pregame show, I want to let you guys know. If you got a question, get it in as soon as you're on the stream. Don't wait until later on, because when we get towards the end of the show, it turns into just lightning round, and I don't really have the opportunity to put up really as much data for you guys to look at or as much research on each of these thoughts. I'd rather go into more detail than just shout out my opinion, but at the end of the show, obviously it's game time. We want to get you, answers to your questions as best as we can. So get those chats in early so that we have more time to go through some stuff for you, and we'll start out with Jonathan Lee here. You got your pick 4. Let's put up some numbers. Starting in the order you put them up there, Cordell Patterson for Atlanta. That's a 1 o'clock game today at Dallas. Atlanta, on the left side of your screen, you see the fantasy points allowed to the running back spots. Dallas currently sits at 23rd, 10th fewest. Nonetheless, Cordell Patterson and his usage been here, that it's been here all year. Kind of difficult to think about putting him on the bench. Daryl Henderson for the Rams on the road against San Francisco. That's the Monday night game. San Francisco sits in 12th, so a good matchup there for Henderson. Let's look at the wide receivers you've got here listed. Stefan Diggs there for Buffalo. Road game against the Jets at 1 o'clock. The Jets currently sit on the left side of your screen, 26th fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. That is 7th fewest. Diggs, certainly we've been expecting some better things, but as of yet, it's been a little bit more of a struggle, I would say, for Stefan Diggs this year in terms of fantasy-wise. Potentially game script against the Bills, we would think might be in the favor of the run game today. So we will see what happens there. The rest of your guys that you have listed, Michael Pittman for the Colts has been very good. Home against Jacksonville, and Jacksonville at 9th on the left side of your screen. So they are firmly in the green. And then you've got Deebo Samuel for San Francisco against the Rams. And the Rams, where do they sit? 25th, so 8th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Half PPR, so I think the running backs are even stronger in this one, I think for sure, as well as Cordero Patterson has been playing, even though the matchup is not as great. We talk about these decisions, and I always like to throw up these 4 ideas: ability, volume, matchup, and game script in that order. By ability, I mean which player do you feel is the higher tier player? Certainly starting the season, you might not have necessarily listed Cordero Patterson as that guy, but he's currently running back 7 for the year, and he is averaging 19.2 fantasy points. So Atlanta certainly seems to love him in that offense. I think that puts him, in terms of the fact that it's not as great of a matchup, I think that still puts him as a start. Daryl Henderson, we talked about as being a good start. That leaves us 3 receivers for 2 spots. And here's the way I would look at this. I think Deebo Samuel probably is the guy that you have to start here despite the matchup. Again, the matchup, let me put the numbers back up for the wide receivers here. The matchup against the Rams is not quite as great, 25th. But Deebo Samuel currently wide receiver 4 for the year, averaging 20.7. I do think that as the rest of this season goes on, you're going to possibly see his volume gets cut into a little bit because of the return of George Kittle. I know that Brandon Ayuk has gotten more use in the offense. I don't feel that Ayuk really impacts Samuel's volume. I still think San Francisco is going to see Samuel as their first option in terms of wide receivers. But I do think George Kittle is right there in terms of their first option overall for the pass game. So I think Kittle's presence may see Samuel's numbers down a little bit. That being said, he's played, I think, too well at this point to put him on your bench. If you see something change, then that might warrant something different there. Stefan Diggs currently sits at wide receiver 21, averaging 15.6. And Michael Pittman, let's see, where does he fall? Is he a little bit farther down the line? I don't think so. He's probably a little bit higher. Yeah, he's actually wide receiver 7, averaging 16.3. So I think Pittman has at least proven himself to be the number 1 option there for Indianapolis. I think I would, in normal circumstances, probably automatically say Diggs over Pittman, but it hasn't necessarily been that. And if you look at the matchups here, Buffalo against the Jets, again, the matchup with the Jets, 26. Indianapolis with Jacksonville, the matchup is at 9. So the matchup is better. I would fear that the Buffalo game script, if they play better, again, I'm in Buffalo, so I'm Bills Mafia, and fantasy football is completely different from rooting interests. But certainly last week, the Bills put up a stinker. And if you would expect them to play better this week, you would think it's possible they play with a lead and perhaps are running the ball a little bit more. I think that certainly could be the case with Indy as well. However, the matchup number simply is better. In this situation, I might actually say Pittman over Diggs here. I think it's close between those two. I think you could probably go either way because I do think that Diggs is the guy that you overall would trust more. It's just this season has been a little bit different. So that might be enough reason to go Pittman instead of Diggs there. I do think it's close. I think Deebo as well as he played. I don't think you're thinking about sitting Deebo, going for a Diggs-Pittman combination here. So that would be my thought. Patterson, Henderson, Deebo, and then your gut, your instinct on Diggs or Pittman. I think that would be one where I would probably be hitting the button back and forth several times before I ended up making some sort of a game time decision. I don't think you're wrong to go either way there, but based on the data, it does seem like you might be able to actually lean a little bit towards Pittman in this situation. Hope that helps you out there, Jonathan Lee, and glad to have you back on the chat with us today. Bill Romanowski is here. Bill says, let's get a fantasy win today, and Bill liked already. Appreciate that, Bill. We'll take this opportunity. A couple of opportunities. First of all, since Bill brought it up, to welcome all of you who might be new viewers to the stream. We're glad to have you with us, and to also welcome back those of you that are regulars. If you have not done so yet and you enjoy our content, make sure and subscribe to the channel. That way you can get those notifications whenever we have new content. And also, if you're enjoying what we do here, please feel free to drop us a like. The likes and the subscribes, they really do help out the channel a ton. So we always want to take that opportunity to mention that to you guys, and also thank you all for being with us today. And also, this gives us an opportunity to talk about, before we get to the rest of the chats, our 6 picks game available on our channel. We do this weekly. This is a great week of 6 picks. This is might be one of our best week of picks that we've had so far. This is a very simple game for you guys to play. There's no cost or anything like that, but you're simply going to find this video right now. The link to this video is in the description area below. You can click over and make these picks anytime. They close at 1 o'clock. You're using PPR scoring. Basically, there are 6 fantasy matchups that occur within the same games. You're picking the players that you feel will have the better fantasy scoring day in each one of those matchups. Will keep the standings all season long. Again, PPR scoring, then the picks are open until 1. And taking a look back last week, in week 9, it was Cash Money Wilson and Bobby Shmurda leading the way, a couple of our regulars. This was a 3-2 record that led the way last week. Last week was a very tough and kind of a strange week in fantasy football and just in football overall. So that led to a little bit of a tougher week of picks. Overall, here is our leaderboard. We've upped the minimum to a minimum of 3 weeks at this point. And this is the standings through week 9. We keep the standings by win percentage, understanding that some of you players will play different amounts of weeks throughout the season. But there you see our leaders. Vance go leading the way, and you see the numbers. Cash Money Wilson in second, and Bill Romanowski in third. Go ahead and make those picks for the day. Get your name on that leaderboard and show off that fantasy football skill. And again, we hope that you're enjoying playing that 6 picks game throughout the season. All right, let's get to the rest of the chats. We will put up the banner at the bottom of the screen that let that scroll as long as it doesn't interfere with any of our graphics, just to remind you guys as the show goes on about that 6 picks game. Kicks for Mike is here this week. Welcome back, Kicks for Mike. You say long time no see. We are here. Glad to see you again, Kicks for Mike, and all of you regulars. Bill Romanowski asks us, Cortland Sutton, Kyle Pitts, or Dawson Knox? Will Trayvon Diggs cover Pitts often? A lot of good thoughts here, Bill. Let's take a look. Of course, Dawson Knox expected to be returning from injury this week. We will start in the order that you've got them. So Cortland Sutton, let's look at matchup numbers for Denver. Sutton has been a little bit, I would say, disappointing for Denver. You would have expected him to be a little more involved in the offense than he has been. I do believe there's been some injury issues over the course of the season, but I'm scrolling to find Cortland Sutton on the list of top wide receivers in terms of fantasy points scored this year on my other screen, and I am scrolling forever. I've probably actually missed him at this point. There he is, 27th on the list, and again, that's not the projection number. That's based on what he's scored. So he is currently wide receiver 27, averaging 12.6 fantasy points for the year. When you take a look at his numbers on a game-by-game basis, the last few games, the targets have been really down. Really curious. He had a run of a good amount of targets throughout the middle of what we've had to play so far. But 5 targets in week 7, 4 targets in week 8, 2 targets in week 9. Very interesting. Under double digits in 2 of those 3 games. Don't know what to account that trend to, whether it was game script or opponents. Who knows? But when you compare him to a guy like Tim Patrick, in that offense, who currently sits at wide receiver 29. Yeah, Patrick didn't have a lot more targets, still had a little bit more production during that stretch. So Sutton is a little bit of a curious case. I'm not sure what to make of that there. I normally probably wouldn't ever, it sounds like this is a flex question, Bill, since you're asking wide receiver or tight end. I probably wouldn't normally start a tight end in the flex spot like that, but when you're talking about a Kyle Pitts, I think there's an argument to be made to go with Pitts based on the volume and whatnot, and the fact that the receiver core, with the unfortunate absence of Calvin Ridley, again, a personal matter, not an injury, so we hope that everything is okay with Calvin Ridley. Certainly they have to have somebody to throw the ball to, and we know that Kyle Pitts is expected to be a guy who's very involved. The last few games for Pitts, now the last couple of games have been down games in terms of fantasy points a little bit, but the targets have still been there. In the last 5 games overall, target-wise, 9, 10, 8, 6, 7 in that order. And fantasy points, 9, 27, 23, 3, and then 9 in that order. Playing a Dallas team, as you see on the left side of your screen, fantasy points allowed to the tight end spot, Dallas number 12. So the matchup is pretty good. You know what? I don't think I even mentioned what the matchup was for Sutton as I was discussing him. Denver plays at 425, home against Philadelphia. And where does Philadelphia fall? 29th. So fourth fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Not a great matchup there. And then back to the tight ends for Dawson Knox on the road against the Jets. The Jets sit at 8th. So the matchup a little bit better. I'm a little bit hesitant on Knox, being that it's his first week back from injury, and the injury was some sort of a hand injury that as a pass catcher, you would think that if there's any hesitation in terms of how Buffalo feels about him being completely healthy, it doesn't seem like they're going to have Josh Allen throwing a lot of fastballs to him and potentially putting that in harm's way. So I might stay away from Knox this week. I do certainly think that, the Dallas defense could be a concern, but I don't know if that's enough to sway you on the decision in terms of when it comes to Pitts. I think your decision here, Bill, basically comes down to if this is a flex spot, are you okay with playing 2 tight ends in your lineup, which is what it obviously would be if it were a flex spot because somebody else is filling your regular tight end spot. That's an uncomfortable situation for me. I don't ever like playing 2 tight ends in this situation. I think it could be warranted. I think the matchup is not so good with Sutton, and it's been kind of weird the last couple of weeks, Sutton's involvement. That might be enough to make me start Pitts here. I think probably Pitts may have a better ceiling and potentially the floor is probably close. The floor is probably close just because a tight end floor is never going to equal a wide receiver floor. It's just difficult to find consistent production at the tight end spot, but this might be one situation where you can go that way and feel a little bit better about it. So that is not necessarily a clear-cut answer on what I'm thinking here, but it sounds like kind of what I'm saying and what I'm looking at here says that I might consider Pitts as the choice that I would go with here, but I do think it's close over Sutton, and I don't think I would throw Knox into that mix. Hope that helps you out there, Bill. And if you got any follow-ups on everything, I'm going to try to hit these chats in order. I will get your follow-ups later on down the line as we get there. Again, I want to make sure try to get everybody's chats in as well as possible. Kicks for Mike. Big game from Dalvin Cook today. We will see what happens there in Minnesota. We got Blammo Time back, one of our regulars. Blammo Time says Aaron Rodgers for President 2024. That's a good team name. I like that, Blammo Time. You say hello and hope all is well, and I say hello back. Welcome back, all of you guys, and especially all of you regulars. I shouldn't say especially because that's no disrespect to all of you that are new viewers. Welcome to all of you. Glad to have you on the stream. Ian H. is on with us today. Ian H. says James Robinson or Michael Carter. Interesting, and in terms of my own personal leagues, I have had to make this actual decision myself. We'll put the numbers up first, and then I'll give you some thoughts on how I feel about this situation. Robinson for Jacksonville on the road against Indianapolis. The matchup is not – where does Indianapolis fall? Not great. Second to last in terms of fantasy points to the running back spot. Michael Carter for the for the Jets against the Bills. That's a home game, 1 o'clock, and the Bills at the very fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. So neither one is a good matchup. This all comes down to how comfortable are you with the James Robinson injury, because the kind of the information we were seeing was that it was going to be a game time decision. Sounds like from what I've read, it's a pain tolerance issue, but they have him as active. I don't know how comfortable I feel. Usually your reports that you read during the week are not too far off. And the fact that if they during the week were saying it's likely he's going to play and then he was active, then that would have been one thing. But that's not what they were really saying. They were like, it was more like this is kind of a not sure type situation. So the fact that he is playing, what does that mean? Does that mean it's more likely that he doesn't make it all the way through this game? I think that's probably the way I would look at this. And this is going to be probably an instant call on your part, as it was for me. Michael Carter is going to split the time with Ty Johnson, always in that offense. Carter has been playing better. It's a bad matchup. Robinson, to me, is definitely the higher tier player, as I always talk about those 4 factors: ability, volume, matchup, game script. So there's a lot of weird stuff in play here, which to me, and especially, I shouldn't say just to me, but for me, as I made this same decision in some of my leagues, I went with Robinson simply on the fact that I'm hoping that if they're playing him, that means they're comfortable with his health and feeling like these teams know what they're doing. They wouldn't play somebody if they weren't comfortable. Now, that's not always the case, and we've seen it certainly go the other way. My pick, the reason why I played Robinson was purely based on I feel like he's a higher tier player, and given this choice of all the other weird things involved, I felt like that's the way I had to go in taking Robinson in this pick. I would not fault you if you went the other way to protect yourself against his potential injury at all. I think there's a valid argument to doing that here, especially since the matchups are even. If Robinson's matchup was way better, then that would make the argument stronger in terms of Robinson. So I do think you can start Carter if you're uncomfortable with the injury, but I do think that if you trust the potentially thinking of Robinson as the higher tier player, that's enough to make you go that way. So that's about the best. Again, a lot of the times with these decisions, I like to kind of just present information that leads you toward an answer, especially if I don't feel like it's clear cut or there's a good argument either way. Like I said, for me, it was Robinson here. That was the choice that I made, but I don't think I can fault you if you go the other way. And as I always say, Ian, whichever way, first of all, hope the information helps you reach the decision that you're most comfortable with. And also whichever guy you pick there, I do hope that they go ahead and crush it for your team. All right, let's see who's up next in the chat here. Let me get back. There we go. Trimsy is up next. Welcome back, Trimsy, to the stream. You say Wentz or Wilson for quarterback. And then I'm not sure if you're asking Goodwin or Godwin. I'm going to assume you're saying Godwin here. Renfro, Myers, Elijah Moore, or Emmanuel Sanders, pick 3. Let me see if there's any follow-ups here from you, Trimsy. Just clarify for me here if you're talking about Chris Godwin for the Bucs. I'm going to assume that that's who it is, but just let me know if you're talking about like a Marquise Goodwin or something like that. We'll start with the Wentz or Wilson question here. I'm going to put up numbers for the quarterback spot first. Indy home against Jacksonville. Jacksonville on the left side of your screen. Fantasy points allowed to the quarterback spot. They sit at 12th. And then Seattle against Green Bay on the road, 425 today. Green Bay, where do they sit? 25th, 8th fewest. So the matchup is not quite as good. Certainly Carson Wentz has been playing better, but I think Russell Wilson is, to me, you value a Russell Wilson far enough ahead of a Carson Wentz that I think you go with Wilson now that he's ready to go. Obviously, Wilson's current standing, quarterback 28, that's injury related. He's averaging 19.9 for the season. Carson Wentz is up to quarterback 10. He is averaging 18.6. So even with Carson Wentz's good play as of late, his average is still less than Wilson. I certainly think that I feel more comfortable with the floor and the ceiling of Russell Wilson if it were me. And again, you have to kind of trust when these players come back from injury that these teams know what they're doing. They're not going to put someone in jeopardy if, perhaps there's a problem or a situation where they feel like the injury could be made worse or he might not make it through the game. If that were the case, I would like to think that they wouldn't have him out there yet. So that's kind of how I like to look at those things when there's injury concerns there. Obviously, things happen. We don't want to see that. But again, this is kind of like, I always say this, fantasy football is a lot like poker. Like you just come up with decisions that you feel best about and then see how the cards fall. That would be the way I would look at it there, Trimsy. Let's look at the other side. And we've got a bunch of wide receivers. So let's take a look at matchups and see who we land on here. Chris Godwin for the Bucks. That is a 1:00 game. Washington is the opponent, and Washington currently number 2 in terms of fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. I do think that Chris Godwin is significantly high enough up there that I don't think you can sit him. And here's your follow-up. Thank you for getting that for me, Trimsy. You do say Godwin for the Bucks. I think that that's reasonably Godwin's play and his level in terms of the tier player that you believe he is. I think he's going to be one of these choices here for you. Hunter Renfro for Vegas. That is a home game Sunday night, 8:20. Kansas City is the opponent, and Kansas City sits at 21 there on the left side of your screen. Fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Jacoby Myers for New England. That is a 1:00 game. Cleveland home game. Cleveland sits at 16, so right in the middle there. Elijah Moore for the Jets. Jets home game against Buffalo. Buffalo at very fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. And Emmanuel Sanders for the Bills. Same game. Jets currently sit at 26th, so 7th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. I think it's Goodwin. I'm sorry, I keep saying Goodwin. I think it's Godwin for sure here. I'm hesitant on Moore because of the matchup. I'm hesitant on Sanders because of the recent Buffalo play and his involvement in the passing game being a little bit less consistent than it was earlier in the season. Let's see where he falls on the list right now. Sanders is currently wide receiver 34 for the year. And I'm going to call up his game-by-game performances here. Obviously, in that stinker they put up against Jacksonville, not really much going on for anybody there. He still managed double digits last week, 8 targets, 11 fantasy points. Only 4 targets the week before, and that's really most of the other weeks. The 4 targets in week 8 was his lowest. It seemed to kind of bounce back a little bit from that last week. So I don't think we probably don't take Sanders out of the equation here. I might take Elijah Moore. That's a little bit of a flyer to me, but I might take him out of the equation just simply because that matchup is bad against the Bills. I do think the Jets are going to have to throw the ball today. It wouldn't surprise me there, but I don't know. There's question marks to me. Hunter Renfro for Vegas. Again, that matchup, where do we say we were at with that matchup there? Kansas City, a better matchup, I thought. 21st, not great. Renfro overall for the season is wide receiver 30, averaging 13.5, just slightly ahead of Sanders' average of 12.6. And then Jacoby Myers, he is wide receiver 36, averaging 10.6. And again, the matchup there for New England against Cleveland, that's a weird one with all the injuries. Cleveland their backfield is banged up. Wow, we got one of the 3 for sure that I feel good about. Marquise Goodwin. I probably, out of the other guys, you feel like Emmanuel Sanders is probably the highest tier player. So he by default might get one of these spots. In the Buffalo offense that you expect to be high powered, even if the game script does go towards the run game, that it might be enough to go Sanders here. I think I'm probably going to lean that way in terms of the second pick. And the third pick there, I might just, Las Vegas now has Deshawn Jackson. Is that going to impact the play at all for Hunter Renfro? I don't know about that. Renfro is currently wide receiver 30. Let's see. Myers is 36, and Elijah Moore is a little bit farther down the line, right? Currently at 60. I feel like it's between Renfro and Moore here, depending on which way you feel. If you feel like the game script from the Jets is enough to get you the volume you need to overcome that matchup, that it could be Moore. But I think Renfro probably has proven to be a little bit of the safer floor of all these players. Like, it seems like, Hunter Renfro, pretty much you think of him, right, as a guy that might not give you the huge game, but is pretty much going to give you a nice, reasonable game the whole way through. He's only had 1 game under double digits all year. His targets have been pretty consistent the whole way through, 9, 7, 6, 8, 8, 5, 8, 9. That's the run of targets. Week 6 was the only week where he didn't produce double digits, and last week he actually had his second highest fantasy scoring day with 18 points in the PPR format. So I think I'm going to pick Renfro there because of the floor, whereas I don't feel like I feel as good about the floor of either Myers or Moore. Certainly they could also have nice games. Again, anybody could have nice games. I wish, like I always say, fantasy football is all about opinions. By no means do I feel like I'm the only one. I wish I could say every week, like, bang, all these guys are going to be, this is the best guy. That's not. I mean, I would be a fantasy football wizard and winning all my leagues, and none of us are that good. I wish, but all we can hope for is that we come up with the best data and the best information and try to make the best winning decisions over the course of time that gets us there. So that's going to be my thoughts there, Trimsy. Hope that helps you out. So I guess what I said was Wilson, Godwin, Sanders, Renfro. That was the way I went on these. Hope that whichever players you pick there, hope they do crush it for you and go out and get that W this week. All right, let me get the fantasy points off the screen here, and we'll move on to the next pick here. Your boy Mari is here. Welcome back, one of our regulars. You say Zach Moss or Devin Singletary. This is purely a volume play. Obviously, same matchup, so no reason to really discuss the matchups. Where do I feel Buffalo is going to go on this one? Zach Moss has been in concussion protocol this week, and I want to say he only cleared that concussion protocol possibly yesterday or today. I'm going to look up his information here. Yahoo is who I usually like to trust in terms of the player notes the most. So I'm going to look him up there and see what they say about when he actually, of course he's not listed. Zach with a K. If this were not an injury situation, I would pick Moss here because Moss is the guy they use on the goal line. Here's what they say. Zach Moss concussion is active for week 10. Great news for the Bills. Floundering offense that Moss won't miss any time. I'm reading this directly from Yahoo's report. After departing last Sunday's shock loss to the Jags, but Moss had seemingly already fallen back behind Devin Singletary before departing in week 9. Not departing, that's something completely different. We would consider him a shaky flex for what is admittedly a smash bounce back spot for Buffalo. Again, that is Yahoo's take. I sometimes agree with Yahoo's take on things. I'm going to read Devin Singletary's for comparison. I sometimes agree with their take. I feel more comfortable with their take on injuries than I do with their projections. Sometimes I feel like their projections are not there. I don't like them. Here's what they say about Singletary. They say nothing for this week. They only talk about last week. Singletary had 5 carries to Zach Moss's 3 before Moss exited with a concussion, meaning that Singletary was more involved this week than expected. His additional snaps didn't lead to fantasy production, with overall volume limited for the struggling Bills offense. Here's the thing. I get it, Yahoo. I mean, sure, he had more carries than Zach Moss. The game was 9-6. How many goal line opportunities were there in that game? If they were, they didn't work out well for the Bills, that's for sure, or for anybody for that matter. Despite the fact that Singletary gets more work with the Bills, I can't imagine that they're going to hand the ball to Singletary if they're down there at the goal line. They just haven't done it. I mean, you just have not seen it. So I don't know that you're going to take, even in that situation, I don't know that you're going to take Singletary over Moss here because of those opportunities. And again, against the Jets, you would think there's more game script for the run game. So that potentially means more volume for both. So unless they decide that Moss is hurt or they simply go away from him completely, I would expect there to be room for both of these guys. That being said, I would still go with Moss because you expect him to be the guy that they trust at the goal line, and that's certainly where you have the opportunity to rack up your fantasy points. So to me, it's Moss here. I can see the other way for Singletary, especially because of the injury, but if this were my decision, I would probably still stick with Zach Moss there. Hope that helps you out there, your boy Mari, and welcome back to the stream. Glad to have you be here. Blammo time is up. Godwin being good to go is a big boost. I was thinking Jefferson at flex PPR, but you're right on and going with your advice from the other day. So, sounds good to me, Blammo time. As I always say, I like to present information. You guys know your rosters as well as anybody. So I never really feel like I want to answer by saying in a pure situation like this guy. Absolutely no way there's anybody else. Like, that's just not how I look at fantasy football. I just don't think that's the right way to play. There's so many other factors involved. So I hope the information helps, Blammo time. And as I always say, hope whichever guys you go with there, hope they crush it for you. Alex R., let me see how close we are to game time. Got about a half hour. We haven't talked about actives, inactives yet. If I get caught up a little bit on the chats, then I will go to that. But until then, I'm going to try to hit these chats because we're a little bit behind on these. So I'll say this, keep an eye on your information and your notifications in terms of inactives. If we don't happen to get to those within this show, so be it. I'll assume that you guys do your homework and you have that information available to you. Alex R., you say Christian Kirk, OBJ, Kenyon Drake, Emmanuel Sanders, pick one. Well, the first part of the answer to this is going to be a little bit of I'm not sure we know. The situation here is this. Deandre Hopkins, I don't believe is expected to play today. Let me see if I can find this on any of my screens that actually tells me the information that I'm looking for here. Yeah, I have DeAndre Hopkins on the other platform that I'm looking at that says not expected to play. That would mean Christian Kirk, you would expect to have a little bit of an edge in possible volume there. However, it also says Kyler Murray not expected to play. And so, therefore, the quarterback play, you would obviously trust it more with Murray there than you would with Colt McCoy. So let me just look up Christian Kirk to see what happened last week with Colt McCoy in there. Where does Christian Kirk fall? I can't find Christian Kirk because he's not a running back, and I'm looking at the running back screen. Once in a while I look at the right place. Not always. Christian Kirk is currently wide receiver 24 for the year, averaging 13.4. I don't see if you say there, Alex R., if this is PPR or not. If it is PPR, certainly there's some more value there in taking the wide receiver. 6 targets last week. It's the same as he had in week 8, so not a big difference. He did have 16 fantasy points last week, 91 receiving yards in that game, and he was 16th overall wide receiver for the week. I think that probably because of the volume here, he's probably my first thought. I don't think I want to trust Odell yet. I know Robert Woods, unfortunately, is now out with that ACL injury. Just hard to believe that worked out that way. that offense is going to be Cooper Kupp's, and with Odell being so new in that offense, I don't know what he will get this week. It's possible that they try to kind of welcome him there with a nice amount of volume, but I don't know if I trust that right now, right out of the gate, enough to go over with a guy from Christian Kirk. Kenyon Drake, certainly I think is playable for the Raiders. I actually have had to play him in one of my leagues myself. He currently sits at running back 28. Again, that matchup, what I didn't do is put up any matchup numbers as I'm looking through this information. Let's go back to that. Wide receiver matchups for Kirk. Let's take a look here. Let me go. Where am I at? I'm talking about Kenyon Drake. I don't know. I've lost control. Let's go back to the matchups. Christian Kirk for Arizona. That is a matchup, and that game time that's a 4:05 game, home against Carolina. Carolina sits at 28th, fifth fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Beckham for the Rams at San Fran. Monday night game, San Fran sits at 24th. Not much different, ninth fewest. The matchups for the other guys, Kenyon Drake for Vegas against Kansas City. Fantasy points to the running back spot. Kansas City sits at 16th. And then Emmanuel Sanders, who we talked about a little earlier for Buffalo against the Jets. The Jets sit at 26th. None of these matchups are really great. I don't think I want to – if I have to make this choice, it's kind of a volume play to me. I think it's between Kirk and Sanders, really. I don't think I would take Drake over either of those guys. And like I said, I just don't trust knowing yet what's going to happen with Beckham enough. I'd like to at least see something for a week to have something to go on data-wise. So I think it's between Kirk and Sanders. The matchup is it slightly better for Sanders? Yeah, 2 spots, though. I mean, it's not a big difference. I think Buffalo you would expect. Given that you don't expect Murray to play, unfortunately, you can't wait. It'd be better if you could wait on this decision until finding out if Murray somehow does play, because I do think with Murray, it would be a Kirk. Kirk would be the pick because of the potential uptick in volume. But without Murray, I think you're looking at the quarterback play here, and I think that's probably enough to go Sanders in this situation. That would be my pick, Alex R. I hope that helps you out there. A lot of information, and as always, whichever guy you go with there, I do hope that they crush it for you. Manir N is up next. Devontae Williams or Van Jefferson or McKissick. Let's take a look at some matchups here, starting with the matchup for Denver for the running back spot. Denver currently, 4:25 game at home against Philadelphia, and Philadelphia left side of your screen, 5th most fantasy points to the running back spot. So a good matchup there for Williams. Van Jefferson, the wide receivers, we already talked about the Rams against San Fran. They sit at 24th, 9th fewest. And then J.D. McKissick flipping back to the running back graphic here for Washington, home against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay sits at 26th, so 7th fewest. I think the matchup clearly goes with Williams here. I don't think that either one of these guys has an edge in volume. I don't think let's put it this way. I don't think Jefferson or McKissick has an edge over Devontae Williams in volume, and therefore the matchup is best for Williams. I probably like that situation. I know that he's splitting time with Melvin Gordon, but I don't know if, Van Jefferson, yes, no Robert Woods, but Odell Beckham is obviously there. How does that shake out? We don't know. And McKissick for Washington, remains to be seen how healthy Antonio Gibson is at this point. I was concerned with the fact that we saw Gibson's name popping up during the week. The fact that they had their bye week and he doesn't appear to be completely healthy really concerns me for actually the entire rest of the season for Gibson. Because if he can't get healthy in that week off, he's not going to get healthy while he's playing every week. As someone who has Antonio Gibson in a bunch of spots and who had really high hopes for his season this year, I'm very concerned at this point. I think that's enough to make you think about McKissick in a lot of spots. I just don't think this is one of them because the matchup is so much better for Devontae Williams. Again, Devontae Williams currently sits at running back 24 for the year. Interestingly enough, J.D. McKissick is running back 25. Williams averaging 10.2. McKissick is 11.4. I think once I look at these numbers, you're going to find more consistent numbers for Williams that reach that average. 4 weeks under double digits and 5 weeks over, high of 17. A low of 5 in week 1. The last 2 weeks, he had 7 and 11. McKissick, I want to say, has been more up or down based on game script. 3 weeks under, I guess not quite as up and down as I would have thought. 3 weeks under double digits and 5 weeks above. 20, 17, 19, 10, and 17 are those weeks. I could see some argument here to think about McKissick for some matchups. or for some decisions. But I think in this particular one, you look at the difference between these two matchups. Again, Philadelphia sits at 5 and Tampa Bay sits at 26. I think, in these situations, you trust the data. Again, like poker, you make the best decisions that you can based on what's in front of you and see how the cards fall. And I think in this situation, that is the way that I would look to go here. So for me, it's Devontae Williams, Manir, and hope that helps you out there. And hope whichever guys you go with there, hope they crush it for you. You have another question here, Higbee or Freiermuth? We'll take a look at matchups here. My instinct says Freiermuth because he's got the hot hand right now. Higbee for the Rams, San Fran. They are currently 24th in terms of fantasy points to the tight end spot. You see it there. 9th fewest. And Freiermuth for Pittsburgh against Detroit. Detroit currently sits at 22nd. So not that much better of a matchup. The question mark here, obviously, is the quarterback play. Is the lack of Ben Roethlisberger in that offense enough to make you go with Higbee here? Higbee currently tight end 13 for the year. Freiermuth at tight end 15. Higbee averaging 8.8. Freiermuth at 9.4. The last couple of weeks for Freiermuth is obviously where he has made the biggest difference in that offense. In the last 3 games, 7 targets, and then 6 targets. Fantasy points 13, 14, and 21. Prior to that, he only had 1 week in double digits, but clearly he started to establish a little bit of a rapport there with Ben Roethlisberger. What does that mean with Roethlisberger out? Hard to say. Expected to be Mason Rudolph this week, although I have heard the name Dwayne Haskins out there a little bit this morning already as like, do we really know it's going to be Rudolph? Either way, I don't think it's great that you're not talking about Roethlisberger there, but I don't know if it's enough to make me not play Freiermuth. Higbee, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games under double digits this year, 4 over. No huge games. The targets have been reasonably okay. Only had 3 in week 8 against Houston, a team they were, it's not a situation where they were probably needing to throw the ball as much. Last week, 10 targets for Higbee, ending up in 10 fantasy points. I think this is a little bit of a toss-up. I think the way to look at this, Manir, is that Higbee gives you probably a safer play because of the fact that with the Pittsburgh situation, you just simply don't know what the quarterback, how that's going to shake out. It's possible that with a backup quarterback there, they look for some safer throws, and that could mean Freiermuth gets a little bit more volume or at least equals his volume, or it could be that things go badly just overall at the quarterback spot, and you're ending up with a real bad game. And that's why I say I think Higbee is the floor. I think Freiermuth probably gives you a little bit better of a ceiling here. I don't know that it's enough. At the tight end spot, I might trust the fact that it's tough to find difficult production, and anytime you're dealing with a backup quarterback, even if it's a guy who's gotten a lot of playing time like Mason Rudolph, that might be enough to make me lean Higbee. But I think this is kind of a toss-up. I don't even know. There's 2 ways to look at this. The Higbee play, safer. The Freiermuth play, hot hand. It's like literally this is one of those where I would be clicking that button back and forth. My instinct is to answer Freiermuth here because of the hot hand despite the quarterback thing. But I don't think you're wrong either way. I would look definitely for this one. Look at your matchups. This is a 1:00 game and a Monday night game. So I would definitely look at your matchups and see, is there anybody that you share? Perhaps it's not going to be the quarterback for Pittsburgh, but perhaps your opponent is playing Matthew Stafford. That would be something that would influence your decision here. Again, in a situation where you're sharing a quarterback, that makes it more difficult for a team to make up points on you. So if you're favored to win, that's a good situation for you. That would be more of the reason to pick Higbee here. This is such a tough. I'm literally going back and forth on my answer as I speak between which way I would go. I know I just said Freiermuth, but like I said, that you just don't know. I don't know, man. This is tough, Manir. Flip a coin. I would flip a coin here too. It might be Higbee because you need the safe bet at tight end. I don't know. Did I say Freiermuth earlier and then I swapped already? You see how sold I am on either one. I understand why you're asking this question. That doesn't help you out one bit and might be one of the worst answers I've ever given on this show, Manir. So I don't know. Last ditch, I'll say Higbee here. But I don't fault you either way. I hope that helps you out. And that, again, might be one of the worst answers I've ever gone through. But hope whichever way you go there, Manir, hope that guy crushes it for you. Larry is with us. Larry says, yo, Joe. Yo, Larry, what's up? Glad to have you back with us this week. Hope that you are not on your traveling roadshow as you are on most Sundays, and perhaps just sitting down, getting yourself a drink there and getting ready for some games. Good luck in your matchups today. Rob Navarro, one of our regulars. Hey, how's it going? Not bad, Rob. How's it going with you? Please pick 2, PPR. Mark Ingram, Elijah Mitchell, James Robinson. Thanks. No problem, Rob. Let's see what we can do for you here. Fantasy points to the running back spot on the left side of your screen. I'll start with this. Without Alvin Kamara, I think Mark Ingram is an auto. I don't want to say auto start because there are other players who you might start over him. But if you were able to get Mark Ingram, I think you're probably playing him this week. I don't know what else they're going to do at the running back spot there. In the middle of the week, it was interesting starting to hear that the Saints were bringing in other running backs to give a shot to. I don't know who else they have to trust there. I think it's going to be Ingram with the clear volume play in this situation in terms of the matchup itself. Road game against Tennessee, 1 o'clock game, and Tennessee is 25th, so the 8th fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. I don't think the matchup is enough to shake you off of Ingram as a starter because of the volume that you expect Ingram to get here. Elijah Mitchell, San Francisco against the Rams. Monday night game, the Rams, they sit where? 18th, right in the middle of the road there in terms of fantasy points to the running back spot. And then James Robinson for Jacksonville against Indianapolis. 1 o'clock game today. Indy, it's a road game, and Indy is at 31st, second fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. This is the way I look at this, Rob. With Robinson, because of the injury concerns, if the other options you have are significant enough that you feel like you can avoid the possible situation of Robinson leaving that game early, I think that deserves consideration in this situation for you. Robinson, I think, is probably the higher tier player and the person that I would go with over Mitchell most weeks, but Mitchell has been pretty involved in that offense. I don't think there has been really much concern there so far with not getting the involvement. Again, San Francisco is one of those teams that can be tough to predict, and sometimes you have surprises, as we've seen already this year. But Mitchell, the last 3 weeks, 17 fantasy points, 20 fantasy points, 13 fantasy points in that order. 2 out of the last 3 games, over 100 yards rushing. I probably would stick with Mitchell here and roll with him in this point, given the fact that you're concerned about Robinson possibly not getting through that game. If the reports were better on Robinson during the week, I might feel more comfortable. Some of you might be in situations where you have to play Robinson, or the decision might not be as viable for somebody else to take that spot up where it's enough to stick with him. I know that's been the situation for me in some spots. But I think Mitchell has been had enough involvement in that offense and played well enough that you feel good about him in this spot over a possible guy that's not 100%. And again, Ingram with the injury to Alvin Kamara, I think the volume is going to be there. And again, even if you did want to go Robinson, the matchup is the worst out of the 3. Indianapolis sitting at 31st. Again, the New Orleans matchup that is 25th, still in the red. And then the San Fran matchup is at 18th, actually the best out of the 3 matchups. So I think to me, Ingram, Mitchell, 2 out of those 3. I understand that it's PPR, but I think those are the guys that you got to roll with, Rob. Hope that helps you out there. Those are kind of my thoughts. Whichever way that you go, hope that those guys crush it for you. Again, let's see where we're at, 12:45. So we are not going to get to actives and inactives today. So keep an eye on your notifications. Make sure you guys know who is out. There are a lot of players. This is a difficult week to get through. So make sure that you know that information. I do want to get through all the chats here as best as possible. Aladdin is back. Welcome back, Aladdin, to the stream, one of our regulars. Ramondre Stevenson, Zach Moss, Alex Collins, pick 2, half-point PPR. Stevenson for the New England Patriots. Here is the fantasy points allowed to the running back spot. New England home against Cleveland. Cleveland sits at 24th, 9th fewest. Zach Moss against the Bills. Road game against the Jets. Jets sit at, where are they? Number 1. Whoa, holy cow. No wonder I couldn't find him. I certainly wasn't looking. I didn't realize it was quite that high. Alex Collins for Seattle. Again, Chris Carson designated to return from IR this week. I don't know that they made a final decision yet. But if they were not going to play him, I don't know why they would bring him back, or, that's a decision that they're going to have to make. That game, Seattle game, is a 4:25 game against Green Bay. Green Bay 20th on the list. So out of these games, which games play at 1? New England plays at 1 and Buffalo plays at 1. So this kind of unfortunately puts you in a really bad spot if you're thinking about playing Alex Collins, not knowing the answer to that question. I think that might be enough to make me. Do I think that Collins has a significant enough of an edge over Moss or Stevenson? I think Stevenson is automatic here because of the fact that New England is missing some guys. Damian Harris not going to play. Let me make sure and just say that for sure that I have that correct, that Damian Harris has been named out. Yes, he is named out in this game. Again, Brandon Bolden is the other guy who they expect to get a good amount of the work there besides Stevenson. I think that he's very reasonable to start here. I do want to look. Let me just see if I can find anything really quick on a note on Stevenson that kind of confirms my thoughts here, because that's the only thing that, again, New England is one of those teams that is not – it's a team that you feel shaky about with their running back sometimes because things can go so many different ways. But let me just read the Yahoo report really quick. I do want to do that. Concussion is active. Expected to take over starting duties with Harris sidelined. That's the Yahoo report. I kind of feel the same way. They in their report, they say he slots in as a low-end RB2. Again, I sometimes trust their information on the injuries more than I do on where they feel they're going to be, because sometimes I don't necessarily agree with their opinions in every way on those. But I do think that Stevenson is, because of that situation with Harris, I think he's the clear cut out of these guys. And then I think it's between Moss and Collins. Obviously, Moss also coming off concussion protocol. I probably would pick Moss over Collins, given the fact that you don't exactly know if there is Chris Carson back in the lineup for Seattle. You would think that's an extreme downtick in volume for Collins. That might be enough to make me not wait, given the fact that you can't make that pick ahead of time. So Stevenson, Moss, Aladdin, those are going to be the guys I'm going to think of here. Moss also, that matchup is very good against the Jets. You would expect the game script to be there for the run game for Buffalo. So Stevenson, Moss there. And then I see your follow-up here says pick one, OBJ, Sutton, and Ayuk. Instinct, believe it or not, is going to be Ayuk here for me. But let's look at matchups. Beckham for the Rams against San Fran. San Fran, where do they sit? 24th, 9th fewest to the running back spot there on the left side of your screen. Sutton, we talked about a little bit already for Denver. Been a little bit disappointing. Philadelphia, home game. Philadelphia sits at... where's Philadelphia? 29th. Not a good matchup. 4th fewest there. And Brandon Ayuk for San Fran against the Rams. And the Rams sit at 25th. So not a lot of great matchups all the way around here. I think that Brandon Ayuk has made his way out of the doghouse, it seems, for the 49ers. I probably feel better about the volume that he's received in recent games than I feel about Sutton. I would have thought that Sutton would be seeing more consistent volume than he's seeing in that offense for Denver. Who knows why that is not the case. Again, Sutton currently wide receiver 27 on the year. That's not a projection. That's his actual standing for fantasy points. The last couple of weeks, he only had 2 targets last week against Dallas. Again, that's a game they were leading the whole way. I can kind of understand that, but the previous 2 weeks, Cleveland only 5 targets, Washington only 4 targets. Concerns me just a little bit. He's averaging 12.6 for the year. You compare that to a Brandon Ayuk, who is, let's see, how much farther down the list is Brandon Ayuk? Way farther. Wide receiver 68, averaging 6.9. However, the recent trend, 7 targets in week 8, 11 fantasy points, 8 targets in week 9, 19 fantasy points. It's a shaky answer to say that I trust Ayuk more than Sutton, given the way the season started. I'm just kind of taking Beckham out of this equation because I just don't feel like I like to have something to go on for data. I just don't feel like we have any idea what's going to happen. It's an exciting new player for a team. They could try to showcase him, or he's brand new in the offense and he doesn't really have it all yet, and so he's out there as a decoy. I don't really who knows what direction that ends up being. So for me, if I have an option that's good enough, I think I'm going to sway away from Beckham for this week. Not that that's going to be the same way all year, but for now, I think I'm going to sway away. Certainly, I can't fault you if you want to take a shot with him going that direction. I think I have to trust actually Ayuk, which is difficult to say given the way the season started here. But of these guys, I think Ayuk is probably the guy I'm going to lead towards. It is reasonably close, I think, if you want to take a shot on OBJ. But I don't think it's Sutton, just simply because I don't think we've seen in the past couple of weeks what we would want to see there from Sutton. Hope that helps you out there, Aladdin, whichever guys you go there with there. I hope they crush it for you. Let's see. We're getting close to game time, so we're going to be lightning mode pretty quick. We'll get a couple more where we'll actually have good information and good analysis, and then we're going to be just pure instinct here, so we might get one more. We're about 9 minutes to game time. Rolando RG, welcome back. You say I need to drop one, Deshawn Jackson or Bryan Edwards. To me, I don't know that either one of these guys gives me all that much. I think that, perhaps Deshawn Jackson is potentially, because you don't know what it's going to be in terms of what it's been already. Has Bryan Edwards showed you enough from the Raiders to keep him? He's currently wide receiver 66, averaging 7.3. I know we haven't seen much of anything from Jackson, but Edwards, his highest target share this year was 6 in week 5. 4 games of 4 targets and 1 game with 3 targets, only 3 games in double digits for the year, and 0 fantasy points last week against the Giants. He's only had double digits in 1 of his last 5 games. I think this is probably, you're looking at this as Deshawn Jackson is a little bit of a flyer for you at this point. If he hits, then great. If he doesn't hit, then you move on and pick up somebody else off the waiver wire. And I don't know if Bryan Edwards has given you enough to make you keep him at this point. More than likely, he's probably your lowest guy on your roster in terms of being able to cut. I probably would keep Jackson just because what happens if things do go really well? If they do, then perhaps you've got a guy with a higher ceiling and someone that you could slot in there and get some big games from. I probably would take the shot on Jackson, just being prepared to cut him if it's not any better, and then you move on to somebody else. At some point during the year, you're probably going to run into some situations off the waiver wire where you have receivers that you could pick up. Rashad Bateman is a guy that comes to mind. Like, he's bringing it on. Elijah Moore is a guy that comes to mind. He's bringing it on. They'll probably either one of them will probably return you more value than an Edwards or likely a Jackson, actually, at this point. Start Gallup or OBJ. I probably trust Gallup over OBJ because even though Gallup's coming back from injury here, I think he's obviously not in his first week with the Dallas offense like Odell is. And like I said, I would prefer to see some data. Some people might think otherwise with OBJ here. I think I'm a little bit more data-based, and I want to kind of know what things are going to be like before I put them in there, because I would hate to see him be out there just as a decoy in his first week, and you end up with a 0 in your lineup. Perhaps Beckham scores 50 fantasy points today. You don't really know, but I probably trust a guy who's been in that offense, knows the system, and even though he's coming back from injury, I would roll with Gallup here if I had to make this pick. And Rolando, you say appreciate the work, my man, and I say, as always, whenever you guys say thanks, I'd like to thank you right back, because you guys make the shows. We love talking fantasy football. We'd always rather talk with you than just talking to you. So we appreciate all of you that are being on the stream. Let's say this before the next thing I'll say here is, first of all, again, in the realm of the thanks, we appreciate all of you who have subscribed and all of you who have dropped us likes, because the likes and the subscribes really do help out the channel a ton. So if you enjoy our content, please feel free to do either or both. If you're a new viewer, hit that subscribe button so that you can get those notifications whenever we have new content. I wanted to mention that one more time because I need to get some sort of a sounder for this. This is lightning. Like, I need to think of lightning mode or something like that. Because right now we got a lot of chats left. We got just over 5 minutes. And I usually like to give more information when we get to these, but I want to get all your answers before game time. So here we go. Instinct answers the rest of the way. JT, Kirk Collins, or Ramondre Stevenson. I'm not sure I know which way you're looking at here, and I'm wondering if you might be asking Alex Collins. Hit me back at the end of this here and drop me a follow-up here, JT. Let me know if you're talking about Alex Collins or Ramondre Stevenson. I will say that if this is a Alex Collins questions, I would go Ramondre Stevenson. If this is a super flex question, I would go Kirk Collins. Let's see, who's next? Where am I? Okay, here I am. Here we go. Cole Ward. Mahomes or Rodgers at quarterback, Higbee or Pat Freiermuth, full PPR. Higbee, as I said below, I'll stick with that before. I'll stick with that answer. And Mahomes, even though he hasn't been great, I will stick with Mahomes. Rodgers hasn't practiced all week. MK, welcome back. Hey, TFF, move Diggs. I have AJ, Hill, and Kupp. I think you remember I need a solid running back, so I got Henderson in the trade. Good to hear that from you, MK. And next up, you say, so we got Allen, Taylor, Henderson, the big three at wide receiver with Waller, and Waller with Bills or Arizona D. I'm not sure the question. Hit me back, MK, and let me know if I'm not. And you say, and yes, thanks, TFF, for extra info and opinion. You've been big help this year. And as always, I say thank you. I'm not sure, MK, if you're just letting me know about the lineup. If you are, then glad to hear that everything worked out. I'm not sure the question here that I'm looking to answer. I I think Bills or Arizona D is what you're asking. I would go Arizona defense against a backup quarterback or potentially Cam Newton new in that offense. I would go Arizona here. I don't think Bills is wrong either, but I would take Arizona because of the quarterback situation there. Cole Ward, backup. One more question. Thank you for all you do. Eli Mitchell or Daryl Williams at the flex? I go Eli Mitchell there. Trimsy, got one from the Bucks. That was from earlier. This one we got. Here we go. Let's roll. Bill Romanowski, thanks for the breakdown. League has 3 WT spots for pass catchers. Odd rules. Good deal, Bill. Cole Ward, drop a like if you've asked a question. Thank you, Cole. Bill Romanowski, finally using my number 1 waiver tonight. Chase Claypool. Someone dropped it in 10-man. Nice, Bill. Matthew Seaver, Christian Kirk, or Brandon Ayuk, full PPR. Quarterback situation, I go Ayuk here because of possibly no Kyler Murray. Matthew Seaver, another one. Again, Matthew Seaver, not Michael Seaver from the Growing Pains. Daryl Williams or J.D. McKissick. Volume play, I'll take Williams unless I'm not aware that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is back. I don't think he is. I'll take Williams because I'll always take the volume or almost always take the volume in these situations for Kansas City. Trimsy says, thanks, man. I say, nope, thank you. Brock Goose, sit 1, full PPR. Deontay, Debo, Terry, Godwin. Brady is your quarterback. I would sit. It's between Deontay and Terry. You're going to play Debo. You're going to play Godwin. Whichever you feel more comfortable with. They're both backup quarterbacks. Terry and Deontay are both getting a lot of volume, but I think that McLaurin has been playing with the same quarterback all year, whereas Deontay, this is a big change from Roethlisberger to anybody else. I'll probably take Terry there. I think it's close. Can't fault you either way. Hope that helps you out there, Brock. Gavin Mertis. Welcome, Gavin. I think you might be a new viewer. Tyler Lockett, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Mike Williams, or CeeDee Lamb. Pick 3. I'm going to pick Brown. I'm going to pick Smith. I'm not going to pick Lockett because I'm not high on him. I'm going to pick CeeDee Lamb. I think it's close between Smith and Lockett on instinct. I would wish I could look up information about the matchups, but there's simply not time. So hope that those help you out there. Doug is up here next. Come on, computer. Let me see here. Doug, Collins or Pollard. There it is. I'm going to go Pollard because of the situation with Collins. If Collins is back or if Carson is back, Collins doesn't get the work. Judy or Van Jefferson. I'm going to go Judy there. Malaki 1460. Herbert or Wilson. I like Herbert. Mike Williams or T.Y. Hilton. If you're going with Herbert, I would go with Williams for the stack, even though he hasn't been playing that well. Mark Newhan up next. My computer's not cooperating. Mike Williams or Cordell Patterson, rest of season, half PPR. Cordell Patterson for sure there. Williams, boom or bust. Atlanta loves Patterson. Gallup, Goddard, or Ramondre in the flex, half-point PPR. I like Ramondre there because of the injury situation. KH, OBJ, Landry, or AJ Green. I like Landry. Perry Williams, flex, CJ Moore, Beasley, DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones, or Dallas Goedert. I like DJ Moore there. I just trust him more than Beasley game script wise. Akrazia, I'm not sure. Akrazia, Debo, Deontay, or Dearness flex. Dearness Johnson, only running back there in Cleveland, run first team. If it's PPR, potentially, I don't know. Hard to say. It's close. Not Johnson, but Dearness or Debo. I would probably play Dearness because I like the running back there, but hard to sit Debo. That's a tough one. Romanowski, Bill Romanowski. Hello to the regulars and new viewers. Let's get the win. Let's see how much time we got. We're at game time. Supernova, Howard or Stevenson. Stevenson. Lucius Varenas, Singletary or Williams. Supernova, Howard or Stevenson. Got that one. Shamar, Sam, Patrick, Marvin Jones, or Gage. I like Patrick there. Supernova, who should I go with? Got that one. Soothing Music, Sanders or Stevenson at flex. Stevenson. A. Ladden, he's playing. Carson is out. Good to know that. Thank you, A. Ladden. Lee Shakur, Elijah Mitchell or Devontae Williams. Elijah Mitchell there. Daniel O, start 2, PPR. Lamb, Allen, or Pittman. Lamb and Allen. Q McBride, start 2. Dearness Johnson, Adam Thielen, Godwin, or CeeDee Lamb. Johnson and Godwin. Tough to sit Lamb. I'm going to say Johnson and Godwin. All in one show. Who would you start? Gordon or Williams? Gordon, better matchup. Mr. Clutch, Mike Williams or Amari Cooper? Amari Cooper there. Abraham Gallardo, need to choose 3. Renfro, Pittman, Kirk, Landry, McKissick, Moss, or Stevenson. Ooh. Pittman, Landry, and of the other guys, Stevenson over Renfro is what I'm going to say. Mr. Clutch, Mike Williams or Amari Cooper, got that one. Bill Romanowski, Slay covering Sutton, still rolling through these. I'll get back to some of these other ones. Zach Pauling, welcome. Matt Ryan, Kirk, or Kyler? I don't think Kyler's going to play. I'd say Kirk Cousins there. Abraham, I think we got that one already. Bruce, Crew, Cole Beasley, or T.Y. Hilton. I would probably take Beasley there because of Hilton's injury concerns. McAvelli, Dedon, Van Jeff, Alex Collins, or Tyler Johnson as a flex. Woof. Van Jefferson. Peter D'Angelo. Need a tight end. Big Ben is out. Pick one. Full PPR. Fryermuth, Fant, Knox. Also, should I switch Titans D to Saints D? I would say Fant here. And I would say I think either D is fine. I think you could potentially go Saints, but Titans have been pretty tough on D lately. That one we got from Zack. Justin White. Should I trade away Hollywood Brown? Let me get back to that one, Justin, so I can get through the rest of these questions. Games I see starting, so I might even be past. But these are the last couple. Kota, Gage, or Hilton. Gage. Justin, I'll jump back to that one. PPR. Gage is the answer I had there. This one I got for you. And for who got that one? And MK gotcha. Okay, good. I got most of them. Hopefully most of them. I know a couple of those were close to game time. This whole lightning round thing is, I would much rather give information. That's why we end up in this situation. So hopefully I got all of you the answers that you needed just in time before these games started. I do see on my other screen here that the Buffalo game is along on its way. So let me hit the couple of these questions that were not necessarily about matchups or about lineup decisions. And where is the one that I saw for a trade question? I'm looking for it. Justin White, here it is. Should I trade away Hollywood Brown? There certainly should be a lot of value right now for Hollywood Brown. He's currently wide receiver 6 for the year, averaging 18.8. I don't expect Hollywood Brown's play to drop off. I think he's proven his value in this offense. I think Baltimore has been more of a passing offense this year than they have perhaps last year. A lot of that probably has to do with the fact that they lost so many players in their backfield to injury. I think if you're going to trade a Hollywood Brown away, and then you say, if so, then for who? And you do say for who? It's not for me. I don't think I could put up the fantasy points that Hollywood Brown would put up for you. So it wouldn't be for me. I think if you're gonna trade Marquise Brown, you've got to be getting very good return for this, because when you look at players that have high value, you have to kind of evaluate, do you think they're going to stay near the level that they're at, or do you think they're going to drop off? And when we talk about sell high candidates, those are the players that we think might drop off. Like we talked about this on a prior stream. Mike Williams in the beginning of the season started out so good. We should have all really known that he was a sell high candidate at that time, simply because of his situation. Yes, he was playing great. Did we really expect that he was going to be the number one option for the entire year among those pass catchers? Not really, because Keenan Allen is that guy, and I couldn't understand why it wouldn't be Keenan Allen over the course of the entire season. So what have we seen? We've seen, Williams was here, Allen was here, and they've started to go this way. And they'll probably keep going this way. Williams is probably going to have still some good games, but it's going to be much more boom or bust. Take that situation and relate it to what you think about Hollywood Brown. And I don't see it being the same way for Hollywood Brown. Again, boom or bust. I in the past, you might have called Brown that, but perhaps that's just because of the volume. The volume has been very consistent this year. He's had 5 games with 10 or more targets. That's a ton. He's been right there the whole way. He's had 5 games with 6 or more catches. And he's had 7 games of double-digit fantasy points. That's really solid. That's not like a fluctuating result there. So I think you feel like Hollywood Brown, you would expect that production to be there. That's why I say, yes, you can trade him, but you've got to really make sure that you're getting the value here. And I don't think the trade would be, involving another wide receiver. I think it's going to be, if you are weak at running back and you are strong at wide receiver, then now you're looking at a situation where they always say trade your strength. Whichever the guy is among your receiver core that you feel like can get you the most return, if you're getting production that's close from all these guys, then yeah, perhaps Hollywood Brown might be that guy, not knowing your entire roster. But he certainly is. The amount of value that he has right now means you could get a nice name back for him if it's a 1-for-1. If it's a 2-for-1, the way I like to look at these trades are, if you are in great shape in your league, you're very confident that you're going to make the playoffs, then a 2-for-1 deal, you should be looking for trading away 2 players and getting back 1 top name guy to make your team more top heavy, because a top heavy team is what you want when you get to your playoffs. but it's not necessarily what you want during the middle of the season to get you through bye weeks because you don't have depth, you don't have options. For teams that are struggling right now, trying to climb their way into the playoffs, you want to keep your depth because now you have more matchup choices to get you into the right guy. You might be able to steal a win here or there based on bye weeks when your opponent can't do the same thing. So that makes the decision here for you, Justin, based on what are you looking at for your team. If you feel like you're good for your playoffs and you want to take a run, then you perhaps package, if Hollywood Brown is the guy, perhaps you package Hollywood Brown with like your RB2 and try to grab like a real top-notch like RB1 for the year. Like perhaps, I don't know if you're going to get a Jonathan Taylor, but perhaps you can look at an Austin Eckler even. Perhaps you can look at a Joe Mixon. Najee Harris you're probably not going to get. These are guys that I doubt other teams are going to trade away. But you need to make sure it's a top-name guy. And if it's a 2-for-1, I don't know how much lower I would go beyond that. If it's a 1-for-1 and you're going Brown for another running back, then I think you can move a little bit further down the current list of players for running backs. I think that any of these players could be in play on a 1-for-1 that, believe it or not, Cordero Patterson, because of what he's done so far, I don't know if I would perhaps make that deal. But Aaron Jones, I think, is in that range. I think DeAndre Swift is in that range. I think Zeke could be in that range. I think Daryl Henderson could be in that range. You're starting to get to the lower end of the range, though. Hollywood Brown for Daryl Henderson, you might, at that point, that's probably as low as you can get without questioning if you're getting back enough. Nick Chubb is a little farther down that list, currently at running back 14. He's missed some time. I think Chubb is a guy that you would include in that discussion. But I wouldn't go much farther down that list than that and feel like I'm giving up more than I'm getting back at that point. I hope that helps you out there, Hollywood Brown. Reasonable thought. And I do think that, you're always thinking about trades is never a good thought when you're going through the season to see if there's a way you can improve your team. That doesn't mean you always do that, but perhaps something pops up. Take a look at the other teams in your league and find out, is there somebody who's really hurting at wide receiver and has a ton of running backs? And that's going to lead you to, are any of those running backs somebody that you can target off that team? Hope that helps you out there, Justin. And let me see. I thought there was one other question farther up the chat. What just happened here? We got a touchdown Bills on my other screen here. I did not see how that happened. Looking over here, it looks like, is it who scored for the Bills? Someone tell me. I'm looking up on my chat because there was, I thought, another question that I didn't get a chance to answer. Somebody, if you're still on, whoever asked the question that's higher up that I kind of said I would get back to after the lightning round, re-hit me with the question in case I miss it. And I'm also looking on my other screen to see who scored. I still did not see who that was who scored for the Bills. Perhaps a defensive I don't even know. We'll find out. Let's see here. Still looking. I just simply don't see it. I know I got Bill Romanowski's chats in there. Let's see. Still looking. Lucius, I got the chats in. Supernova, I got those. Lee Shakur, I got those. I guess I might just be thinking of something else that I didn't see there, but I thought there was one other chat that asked something about a season-long type opinion. I just don't see it right now. So hopefully I got it. If I didn't, it wasn't on purpose, but hopefully I got it there. We got Rob Wilson up. Who do you like the rest of the season PPR? T. Higgins or Mike Williams? It's T. Higgins for sure there. I don't dislike the offense in LA, but I think that while Jamar Chase has proven himself to be the top guy in Cincinnati, I think that Chase and Higgins are closer to each other than Allen and Williams are. That's simply the way that I view it. And I think that's what's going to create more boomer bust games for Williams, because you're going to see more games where Allen gets all of it. I think that T. Higgins is the guy that would be more playable over the course of the season, and you would feel more comfortable with his involvement than you would with Williams as the year goes on. And I think that's what we've seen so far. Williams is currently down to wide receiver 16. He was like in the top 5 earlier in the season. And Keenan Allen is up to 18. Obviously, Higgins is farther down the list, but he also missed time. Higgins averaging 12.9 and Williams averaging 16.6 for the year. But when you look at individual game by game and look at the way they reach those averages, here's Williams' good games: 22, 22, 33, and 37. Here's the other games: 2, 5, 4, and 8. That is not what you want. You want the consistency. Certainly you love to have big games, and there are some formats where the big games are more beneficial, like a best ball format. obviously. Higgins, again, the average I gave you for Higgins was, what did I say the average was here? Let me just take a look again. 12.9. But here's the way Higgins arrived at his average in order of games that he played: 16, 16, 10, 7, 13, 14, 14. So given the fact that most likely on your roster, you are probably playing T. Higgins as a flex in terms of the way your roster sits, you would think you probably have two wide receivers that you would slot ahead of both of these guys in terms of the higher tier. I feel a lot better about having a safer floor, a more consistent play as my flex. I don't want my flex player to lose a game for me. I want my big name guys to win those games and my flex guy to at least give me a floor, perhaps have a great game, but I just can't stand seeing my flex player lose games for me. That's just the worst. Like, that's a lot of the reason why when we have questions about Tyler Lockett, I'm very infrequently answering Tyler Lockett as my pick. One of those players who, if you've never had him on your roster and you just look at like his season-ending stats or his average, you're like, oh, Tyler Lockett, great. But if you've had him on a roster, you understand this roller coaster situation. It's so difficult to predict. And this is what I go back with. I like the quote that Bill Romanowski used on one of these. Can't play with him, can't win with him, can't do it. I want winners. This is how I feel. Like, I don't know how you predict a guy like that, what they're going to do. And that just makes me so uncomfortable. Sure, you love the great games, but for someone who's in your flex spot, typically, let's put it this way. If you need 30 points from your flex player to win, then you're probably in bad shape. Most of the times you probably don't need 30 points from your flex player, but you certainly don't need 2 to lose you a game. So that's the way I kind of look at my flex. That's kind of the reasons why I've talked in like other live streams about how I like a running back as my flex, because I feel like it's a safer amount of production, a safer level, so that you don't end up losing the games because of that guy. So I hope that helps you out there, Rob. That's kind of my thought on the Higgins thing. And you say, please be Diggs in terms of who scored. Now, as I'm doing this stream, I still did not see who. Oh, thank you, Bill Romanowski. You say, let's go Josh Allen. And the answer is Allen passing touchdown to Matt Breida. Finally, Buffalo gets Matt Breida in the game. Well, there goes all of the questions that we talked about between Singletary and Moss today. I heard a lot of talk on Buffalo radio about Matt Breida, and is he going to get more involved in that offense this year? I've never understood in past seasons why Matt Breida hasn't been getting opportunity from anybody, from wherever he's been. I thought he was a productive player in San Francisco. He plays in Miami and gets nothing. And then Buffalo gets him. I'm like, great, but here, let's see what he has. And we don't see anything from him so far. So certainly with the Bills' offense floundering last week, I could see possible changes. Let's see how that works out for fantasy purposes. It might not work out all that great for the people who are looking for Zach Moss. We'll see what happens there if Matt Breida gets a hot hand and takes away a lot of that work. Bill Romanowski. Bill, this is the chat version of doing the impression, so I think that sounds exactly like Mike Singletary in the chat. And Rob Wilson says, Matt Breida, great. I totally started him this week. Said nobody. And Bill laughs at that one to Rob. So, yeah, you never know what's going to happen with these situations. It's fantasy football. That's why we play. It's kind of like golf. You hit that one great shot, and it makes you keep playing. All right, so before we close up the stream here, let's do this. I'm going to take a look around and see at what are the early action that we've seen in these games to see what stands out. We got a Pittsburgh 7-0 lead, and that was a touchdown by Mason Rudolph to James Washington. Another one that you totally started this week, I'm sure. Dallas with a 7-0 lead, and that was Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb. So I hope that I answered CeeDee Lamb for everybody that asked for me so far. Cleveland is up 7-0, and that is Baker Mayfield to Austin Hooper gets the touchdown there for Cleveland. Very nice. Buffalo with a 7-0 lead. As we talked about, it was Allen to Matt Breida, and a lot of passing touchdowns so far. A couple of field goals on the board for both Washington and Indianapolis, but those are the touchdowns so far. Atlanta and Dallas, potentially a high-scoring game there. We'll see how that works out. I hope that it is, because I know that I was kind of counting on that a little bit for some of my own picks. Let me see who else is here. Again, you guys that are on the stream still, I'm glad to answer chats, even though the games have already started. I have no reason to end the stream. On my screen right now, I do not have I don't have anything else but the Bills game, so I don't have another actually screen that I'm looking at, but I do have the stats from other games to look at, and that's where I'm getting my information from. So I will be glad to take more chats before we wrap up the stream, as Evan has done here with us. Welcome back, Evan. I believe you're a return viewer. If I'm wrong, then welcome to the stream, but I think you're a return viewer. You say, who do you think I can get for Carson, Higgins, and Judy wide receiver-wise? You need help. Let's see. So if you're offering, the best player in this deal that you're offering is Carson. And then I think you're looking for a step up from Higgins and Judy. I do like Higgins for the rest of the season. I actually don't dislike either of these guys for the rest of the season. Let's take a look at where they sit right now. Jerry Judy, I want to say, is the higher of the two. Perhaps not because of missed games. T. Higgins is currently wide receiver 40, averaging 12.9. And Jerry Judy falls where? Farther down because of missing games? How much farther down the line is Jerry Judy? 98, averaging 11.3. The average is not bad, but obviously the overall is not there. It's got 3 games of data on his list here. The fantasy points in those games, 13, 8, and 13. So it hasn't been bad. And the same thing with Higgins, has been very consistent. I would actually, if I were you, Evan, I would like to see you, if you're needing help at wide receiver, tell me, Evan, if you're on right now, tell me what your record is, because this is going to impact the way I look at this trade. Are you a guy that's, like I talked about these trades before, are you feeling like you're already locked to make the playoffs, or you feel like you're scrapping your way there? If you're scrapping your way there, I would like to see you keep some depth. I would kind of like to see you keep one of these two and perhaps go 2 for 1 with either Carson Higgins or Carson and Judy for a higher up receiver. Who do I think you could get? You're kind of looking at a little bit of a buy low situation here, because again, you're Chris Carson. What you're hoping for, Evan, is a big game from Carson. One of these weeks when he comes back. I don't know how you're going to get this. You have only 3 losses, which is not bad at all. 6-3 is a pretty good record. So when you say that you need help, it doesn't sound like you need as much help as you might think here. If you got only 3 losses and you're looking at, a guy here, Jerry Judy, who only played 3 games, and Chris Carson, who's been out IR, then you're doing pretty good, Evan. I got to think that you're probably at least in your playoffs right now with a 6-3 record. But that doesn't mean you can't upgrade your team. So who do I think is possible for an upgrade? Again, it's going to depend on the rosters of your other teams. So what you've got to do is you've got to look at a team in your league who is strong at wide receiver and needs help at the running back spot. Those are the teams that you have to look at. That might narrow down your search of who's out there. And if it's a 10-team league, that instead of looking at like 8 or 9 different teams, you might only be looking at a couple that are in that situation. And that's going to determine who from those teams are available to you as wide receivers. But guys that I think you might be able to get in that sort of a deal that it would be giving you an upgrade, I would say a guy like a Brandon Cooks, who's not going to be necessarily valued as a high name, but is averaging 14.8 for the year. He's clearly the number 1 receiver in that Houston offense. Again, the Houston team we don't love quite as much, but his production, his targets have been huge all year long. So this is a guy that you're going to be taking a little bit of a chance on, but has returned good value the whole way. I think it's going to be difficult to get a really top name guy without offering a higher name player in terms of what you're offering to that team. So if you got a higher running back to offer, if perhaps you were comfortable keeping Carson and you want to offer a higher up running back, you'd have the opportunity to get a higher up name in terms of receivers. But if it were Carson, let's say Carson and Higgins, I do think that Cooks is in that range. I think it's got to be enough of an upgrade. Adam Thielen, I think, is in that range, but I don't know if you're getting enough of an upgrade there. I would look at a guy like potentially a Michael Pittman someone might be willing to move Pittman because they're not sure if he continues his production, but he's been really good. Again, I think in any case here, it might be a situation where it's going to be a little bit of a chance on somebody who's played well, but it's not necessarily the name value. Like Devontae Adams is currently wide receiver 5. No one's going to trade you probably Devontae Adams here. You're probably not going to Kupp, Hill, Chase, Samuel, Adams, Marquise Brown. Those are the top 6. I think Marquise Brown is probably the only guy out of all those that you could potentially think might be in that value range, and that's at the top end. But Pittman is at 7, could be in that range. Metcalf at 8. I don't know if I'm thinking about me. Would I trade these guys away? I don't know if I would trade away DK Metcalf, but I would consider a guy in the range of a Godwin or an Evans as a potential guy, because in that situation, if the player in your league has those players and they're really thinking about their team, they know that Antonio Brown has been out and Rob Gronkowski has been out. At some point when they return, some of that volume from Godwin and Evans is going to go somewhere else. It just has to. So that's when these players turn into a little bit of a sell high type thought. And so these are players you might be able to target. I'm just going right down the line. DJ Moore in 11th is probably not a player that that overall a lot of people are super happy with for that team. He's been pretty consistent, but hasn't had huge games, since week 4. So you might find a guy who's down on DJ Moore. You might be able to take a chance on a guy like that he turns it around. That's some potential for you with Cam Newton now at quarterback. Who knows how that shakes out? But as we continue down that list, now we're starting to get a little bit towards the bottom of our range. We're talking Thielen, and then we're Cooks, Jefferson at 15. You can take a shot on the Justin Jefferson. You might be able to pull off something there with someone that's unhappy with the production they've gotten out of him. He's only at wide receiver 15. Mike Williams at 16, no, 2 boomer bust. CeeDee Lamb at 17. I think CeeDee Lamb is undervalued there. Keenan Allen at 18. You might be able to take a shot on a guy like Keenan, who someone might not think that he's given them enough this year. Again, it depends on who needs running backs. If they're really stacked at wide receiver, then you've got to make that argument. Hey, you've got this guy, you got that guy. You can get rid of a guy like Keenan Allen, and you need the running back. That's kind of the deal you've got to kind of work with. DeAndre Hopkins at 19 is possible, but you're getting towards the low end. Here are a couple of guys who have not produced that you would expect to get better. Perhaps not Terry McLaurin, because now we're starting to hear that Ryan Fitzpatrick isn't back. But I'll say this, Stefan Diggs currently sits at wide receiver 21. And another guy, even Amari Cooper at 22. There's actually a couple guys here. Jalen Waddle at 23. Deontay Johnson at 25. A.J. Brown at 28. All of these guys in this range that haven't played that great, you expect more from those guys that I just mentioned. Waddle has been playing. Waddle's not a guy. I shouldn't put him in that category of expecting more. He's a guy that's been playing better as a rookie. But Diggs, Cooper, Johnson, McLaurin, I feel like are all too low for where their ability is right now. And so therefore that says, could they finish the year higher? Possibly. And if they do they have value for you to trade and try to get them up in a sort of a buy low situation? Out of those guys that I just mentioned, who would I value the most? I would probably go after Diggs or Cooper as the first choice, and Deontay Johnson or Terry McLaurin as the second choice in those situations. I think Diggs and Cooper have more upside of the two. I think that Diggs, perhaps you would expect, but I think Dallas and Buffalo, both high-powered offense, so you would expect either one of those guys to be higher up in the standings than they currently are. McLaurin and Johnson would be a little bit more of that fringe, again, because of the quarterback situation in Washington. I like Johnson a lot, and with the unfortunate injury to Juju Smith-Schuster, you really think Johnson is going to continue to be the main guy in terms of volume there for Pittsburgh. So that was a lot of information, Evan. I hope some of that helps you out. Some decent thoughts for you to go through in terms of upgrading that team, but I think that those guys are low enough down on that list that they're definitely in the buy low category that would offer you an upgrade on a T. Higgins type player. So hope that helps you out there, Evan, and hope that you continue to play well in your league, as you haven't been playing all that poorly for saying the fact that you thought you needed help. So good luck there to you, Evan. Hope that helps you out. Rob Wilson, my roster is looking solid right now. Could use a little wide receiver depth. Do you think I could get anything decent for Kareem Hunt? If so, who would you look for in return? Yeah, I think it's possible. And you say PPR league. I think there's value to be had for Kareem Hunt. The problem is, when does Kareem Hunt play again? And how close do you get to your playoffs? When is your trade deadline? If you play on Yahoo, I know that I usually reference Yahoo a lot because I just assume that most players are playing on Yahoo. I think it's the 20th of November. So is Kareem Hunt going to be back before that? I don't know. I don't know if I've seen an update on when. Let's see if I call him up on Yahoo to see when they have projections for him. You're going to have to look for, if he's not back before your trade deadline, then what you're going to look for is a team that's in good shape to make the playoffs, that can take a chance on getting back a player that's not going to play until later on. Hunt is the first week they have projections for him is actually next week against Detroit. And the information that Yahoo has, I'm going to read it directly. It says Browns will not activate Kareem Hunt from injury reserve for Week 10 against the Patriots. Hunt's injury timeline will likely puts him out of the lineup for several more weeks. But with Nick Chubb potentially missing Week 10, the official word on Hunt leaves Dearness Johnson in line for another. Okay, we know that. I never understand. I like Yahoo's information, but I never understand why they start giving you information about somebody else. Like, I clicked on Kareem Hunt. I didn't click on Kareem Hunt to find out if Dearness Johnson was going to play. Like, I probably would have clicked on Dearness Johnson if I wanted to know that. Anyways, whatever. They need to fill up their space, so I get it. Yeah, if without knowing, like, you're not going to be able to look for a team that needs – a lot of times when you make these trades, like I talk about, you look for a team that needs running back help and has wide receiver depth. Well, if the team needs running back help, they're probably not going to trade for a guy who's not going to play for who knows how long. So now you've got to look for a team who's actually strong at running back and who you can potentially make them feel like they are bolstering their team for the playoffs. So perhaps they have a couple of like a solid running back one, but their next two are more flex level. And Kareem Hunt is potentially a flex level. I don't know. It's you're looking at probably a flex level wide receiver, I would guess, and putting it in those terms. If you were going to do a 1-for-1, if you were able to do a package deal, you might be able to get a little bit more. But if I look at when I say flex level, it's players 25 through 36. So RB1 1 through 12, RB2 13 through 24 in terms of the overall standing. So that's where I would look first. And who falls in that area that is of value. Again, you're talking about guys like, I think that like we talked about in the previous trade, those guys that I mentioned, Diggs, Cooper, McLaurin, and Brown, to me on a 1-for-1, I think are going to be too high in the range of what you can get back. So I don't know. Perhaps the lowest guy you can get back there without packaging somebody would be like a Johnson, McLaurin type player. But I don't even know if I would make that, if it were me, if I would make that deal without getting something back in addition. Perhaps you have something in addition. Perhaps you have a backup quarterback, like you have two quarterbacks on your roster that you've needed to play through injury. They're both back, and you could package one of them to a guy that also needs quarterback help. Those are things that I would look at there if you were going to do a 2-for-1. But in terms of a straight 1-for-1, once you get past those guys, now if you're looking in that range of flex players, Tyler Lockett, who I'm not high on, Cortland Sutton, who's been a little disappointing. Tim Patrick's been okay. Renfro's been like a level area. Devontae Smith, who's been up and down. Beasley, who's been up and down. You're running out of guys that really have value for you here. Perhaps at number 35, Antonio Brown, who has been out to injury. Perhaps this is the player that fits that what you're thinking of here and kind of could make some sense, because you can say to your guy in your league, hey, you know, Kareem Hunt's out, so is Antonio Brown. Like, we don't really know when they're going to be back. But in that situation, if you need that help when Brown does play again, hopefully, you're taking a little bit of a chance, but you're hoping that turns out in your favor. Who else is there in that range? I don't see a lot of other players in that range to where you're not giving up too much value, you know, because now you're already down to like Antonio Brown is currently wide receiver 35, but his average is 19-1. Obviously, he hasn't played as many games. T. Higgins, a guy I like at 40, averaging 12-9, but you're running out of players here that are going to really return you the value that you need for a guy that's that high up. If you're a lot of these players, once you get down this low, you start to find some options on the waiver wire that are going to be just as good. So that's kind of my thoughts. I don't think in terms of a straight 1-for-1, I don't know that there are a lot of guys, but Antonio Brown is a guy that sticks out because the situation might be enough to get somebody to make that deal, given the fact that they're both currently out with injury. I think it's going to be tough before the trade deadline to look any other direction there. Hope that helps you out there, Rob. I do see your follow-up here, and you say, hey, great idea. I like that Antonio Brown call. Thank you, and hope it helps you out. And as I always say, when you guys say thanks, I always say thank you guys right back. Same thing with you, Evan. You say thank you so much, and I always like to thank you guys back because, again, you guys on the chat really do make the show, so we definitely appreciate all you guys. We are nothing without you, the viewers. So we appreciate all of you being with us. Bill Romanowski, is Chase Claypool still a big fantasy threat any given week, or is he a 7-point player? I'm not sure what you mean by 7 point. Oh, you think he's going to be 7 points at best? I actually like Chase Claypool. I've liked him all along. And I would think with, again, the unfortunate injury to Juju Smith-Schuster, I would think he still has some value for you once he's back from injury. Obviously not playing this week. Right? Am I wrong? He was not expected to play, and I'm assuming that he is not playing. Yeah, he's on the inactive list. I do think when he's back from injury, I'm not sure how long-term injury that we're looking at here. Perhaps I can call him up on my other screen. Claypool. I would expect the volume to be there for him when he's back. The Pittsburgh offense, a little bit of a question mark. Let's see. It's a toe injury. He is considered, this is Yahoo's report. Claypool is considered week to week. Not good if he's considered week to week, because even though they have numbers projected for him next week, to me that means likely that he also misses next week as well. I think he's a very viable play in terms of like a flex type play for the rest of the season, but especially, a matchup based play, because I would expect the volume to be there enough that when he has a good matchup, he's going to be able to take advantage of it. I would expect Deontay Johnson to still be the main guy in that offense in terms of volume. I think Najee Harris has taken up a lot of those targets, and I do think that Pat Freiermuth's emergence does mean that probably it's not necessarily as high of a ceiling for Claypool because of Freiermuth's involvement in the offense now, but also a lot of Freiermuth's involvement in the past couple of weeks to me has been the absence of Eric Ebron. So at the tight end spot, he's just more the guy that Ben has looked to. We'll see how that shakes out today. Indy up 17-0 in that game over Jacksonville. So let's see who just scored. Jonathan Taylor with a rushing touchdown. So Taylor continuing his good play in that one. Getting back to the chat, Bill. Yeah, I do think that there is value here still for Claypool. I just don't think that it's not like a guy that you're going to be an automatic every week start unless you're in really bad shape at the wide receiver spot. I would think you would have two wide receivers that would be ahead of him. And that makes him a flex play, but it's not a bad thing to have a guy at that level that can return some value in spots to have as an option, because a lot of these times again, we talk about these things every week and all the times when we have these live streams with these lineup decisions, you're looking at who has the better matchup. What does the data say? And there's going to be a lot of times that it's going to say Claypool over other guys who might be in the same type of area. So I like having that depth. I like having those options there. I do think he's viable. I don't think he's every week. No, I don't think he's a locked-in starter every week. But I think he is going to have the opportunity to produce you some value and get you some wins here and there. Hope that helps you out there, Bill. And you say right on, cool. And appreciate it as well. And you follow up with Claypool will be my fifth wideout. Probably never start him, maybe in dire straits. Hey, money for nothing, but the checks are free. Isn't that what the line is? Is it the checks are free or the chicks are free? I don't know. It's been a while since I've heard that song, but I figured that was a good Dire Straits reference for you there. So hope that helps you out there, Bill. And let's take another quick look at the current status of some of the games before we call it a day for the stream here. Taking a look at where we're at. Another field goal for Washington there. Who else do we have touchdowns for? We got a New England touchdown, and it was Mac Jones with a passing touchdown to Hunter Henry, who's been playing well there at the tight end spot, and no Jonnu Smith this week. They made him a healthy scratch. That was an interesting one. Atlanta with a field goal, and Indy 17-0. So not only did they get a touchdown from Jonathan Taylor, but who else scored the touchdown for them? A defensive touchdown must be, because we don't see the only touchdown listed is Taylor, and it was 3-0. So let's see what we had here. Blocked kick on a punt, defensive DST touchdown, special teams touchdown for Indy. For those of you who are streaming Indy this week, good news against Jacksonville. Thank goodness, because I had streamed Indy in a whole bunch of leagues for 2 weeks, given the fact that they were going Jets, Jacksonville back-to-back. And against the Jets, didn't really pan out, so I'm very happy with that, as are most of you who went with Indy looking for that defensive. No other touchdowns yet, aside I got a Buffalo field goal. Let's just take a look to see what's going on in these other games. Tom Brady has 2 interceptions already in that first game. Wow, that is interesting in that situation. Washington hasn't done much with it at all. And Antonio Gibson has not done much either, which is a concern over his injuries. Let's see, Detroit and Pittsburgh, not much going on there. Goff with -1 yards passing for Detroit looks good. Mason Rudolph actually has a touchdown pass, but also has a pick already in that game. Let's see what else do we have here. New Orleans and Tennessee. How much work has Mark Ingram gotten for so far? 4 rushes. Nobody else with more than him. Not a lot going on there. Tennessee, interestingly, this is a situation in Tennessee, in my opinion. Everyone just assumed that Adrian Peterson with Derrick Henry out to injury is going to be the guy. But keep an eye on Deonta Foreman, who formerly played for the Houston Texans, and we always kept thinking, is Deontay Foreman? I don't even know if it's Deontay or Deonta, but we always kept thinking, is this a guy that's going to have some fantasy value at some point for Houston? Perhaps. Does he end up being actually getting more, the guy that's getting more work in Tennessee besides Peterson or Jeremy McNichols? Keep an eye on this game to see what happens. Interesting start that he's got more rushing attempts than Peterson does. Let's see, who else do we have here? Atlanta and Dallas. Atlanta, Cordero Patterson with some early involvement there. Not a lot to speak of. Tony Pollard has more rush attempts than Zeke so far this game and more targets than Zeke. So perhaps I do think Zeke was in and out of the lineup last week. CeeDee Lamb right now the leader, and Michael Gallup has gotten a couple of targets for those of you that have given Michael Gallup a shot this week. New England now up 14-7 over Cleveland. We've got passing touchdown for Mac Jones and a rushing touchdown for Ramondre Stevenson. Yes, I'm not playing Ramondre Stevenson anywhere. That was a fist pump for the answers to the people of you that were asking about Ramondre Stevenson, that he's doing well. I trust me. I've said this before with you guys. I really do, when I'm watching these games, think back to the stuff that we talked about, and I'm always super happy when any of the people, the information that I passed out, when those turn into good things, I'm always super happy when that happens. So Ramondre Stevenson out there with a touchdown this game. Good news for those of you that took a shot on him. Buffalo and the Jets. Singletary with the early amount of work over Moss there. Not over Matt Breida, though. Matt Breida with the target work, no rush attempts. And on the Jets side of things, Mike White has 0 fantasy points, 1 interception so far. Carter with a slight bit of work on the ground there, as has Ty Johnson. Just taking a run through all these games. Jacksonville and Indianapolis. James Robinson has only seen a little bit of work so far, but at least he's in there. Seems to be getting a little more work than Carlos Hyde. Touchdown to Jamal Agnew just happened there. 66-yard touchdown for Agnew, and it says rushed. Does that mean that this was a rushing? I'm not too sure what this is. Did they somehow end around to Jamal Agnew? Perhaps those of you that are watching the Jacksonville game, or we'll have an update on that pretty quick. I'm going to guess, because it hasn't been 1 rush attempt, 66 yards. That must have been some sort of a jet sweep. And a big touchdown there for Jamal Agnew. So nice to know about that. Let's see. We got a couple of chats here. Bill liked the Dire Straits reference. So glad I could help you out there with that one, Bill. Joshua Loyola, welcome. I think you might be a new viewer to the stream. Welcome, Joshua Loyola. You are catching us on overtime on Sunday pregame. What would this be called? Sunday in-game at this point? I don't even know. Daryl Williams or Brandon Ayuk at flex. A lineup question that hasn't happened yet. We can help with that. Sure. Let's take a look at the information that we can give you in terms of the matchups. Daryl Williams for Kansas City. Let's take a look at the fantasy points allowed in the running back spot on the left side of your screen. Sunday night game against Las Vegas. 13th most fantasy points allowed to the running back spot. So a good matchup there. And Brandon Ayuk for San Fran against the Rams. That is fantasy points to wide receivers there on the left side of your screen. And the LA Rams currently sit at 25th, so 8th fewest. The matchup favors Daryl Williams. Brandon Ayuk has seen more volume lately, which makes you feel a little bit better for his situation now than you did before. Joshua, I think perhaps the answer to this question lies in whether or not this is PPR or standard for you. I do think that I think that even if this is PPR, again, I did not look up the status of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I don't believe he's back this week. If he is, then obviously that would take the Williams things out of play. But let me just look up on my other screen real quick to give you that information, because I would feel like I'm doing a disservice if I told you to start Daryl Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in this game. Okay, it does say he is designated for return. Chiefs coach, here's the Yahoo report. Chiefs coach Andy Reid said it is probably a stretch for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to return for Week 10 against the Raiders. When asked if CEH would return Sunday night, Reid transparently responded that Edwards-Helaire worked all week, but it's probably a stretch. And then it does go on to talk about Williams averaging 18.2 touches and continue to be used as a workhorse RB2. Again, I do think that it's good that you can wait to see. Perhaps you will know a little bit more before the San Francisco game to make this decision, because obviously those are the two games that are involved in terms of making this decision. But the fact that this is the Sunday night game, the San Fran game is the Monday night game. Great. Perfect. You'll know the answer to if there's a surprise CEH being back. If there is, then obviously you're going Ayuk. But in the absence of that, I think it's Williams here. Again, at the flex spot, I personally like to have running backs there because I like to have consistent level of production at the flex, hoping that your big name guys, that your top guys at wide receiver, at running back, are the guys that are going to win you your week. And if you get a solid level at your flex, then you're gonna have enough to get you through. If they have a great game, then great, even better. But a guy that could potentially be a bad game helps you less. And Brandon Ayuk, I think, has been better in the last couple of weeks, but also there's been some games this year, obviously, from Ayuk where you're like, where is this guy? What happened? So again, I like the safer level there with Williams, and I like the amount of volume that he's been getting. To me, it would be Williams in this spot over Ayuk. And also the matchup is way better. Again, the Ayuk matchup 25th, as you see there, 8th fewest fantasy points to the wide receivers. And then the running back matchup against Las Vegas for Williams, 13th. So the matchup also better. I like the volume better. I like Williams of these two choices. Hope that helps you out there, Joshua. And again, if you are a new viewer to the stream, welcome, and glad that you were able to get in an overtime chat for us as we're well into the first round of games, and somehow my light in the background is still on. Never would have expected that at this point, but thank you for the chat, Joshua, and hope that helps you out. Vansco is with us. Vansco, our 6 picks leader. Here's what we're going to do. Vansco, before I answer your chat here, I'm going to put up, because we haven't done this, you see it on the scroll right there, but I'm going to put up the standings. I'm going to take the scroll down because the picks are now closed. But let's put up a nice pop here for Vansco leading the way. First, let's talk about last week. Cash Money Wilson and Bobby Schmertle led the way, 6-2. And Vansco currently in the lead, pacing all the players in 6 picks. We'll see how that works out. It's a great week of picks this week. Some awesome games to pick from, awesome matchups. There's the thumbnail for those of you that didn't get a chance. If you're watching live or if you're watching on replay, it's 6 picks. This was the week 10 thumbnail. Simply 6 matchups for you to pick between, no cost or anything like that. But a chance to show off your fantasy football skills and very simple rules, PPR scoring, 6 matchups of players, keep the standings all season long. Picks, as we said, are already closed for this week, but that doesn't mean that you can't play again in future weeks. Let's get back to Vansco's chat, our current leader. And you say, is this the I willingly played Gaskin again chat? Shaking my head. No, Vansco, you didn't play Gaskin again. There's only so many weeks you can get away with that one. And I know you've kept saying you're not going to play him. Bill likes that one. Gaskin has a loyal following. I've never owned him in fantasy. And Vansco, you say, I'm beholden to players to help me win a championship the year before. I shouldn't be, though, in response to Bill. I mean, as someone who is a fantasy manager, it is tough. This is why we've talked about this before. And it's interesting to me that in playing in my own leagues compared to doing these live streams, when I go through and do the research for these shows and even go through some of these lineup questions live, it offers a much more outside the box viewpoint. I guess there might be a better way to put it. I think I've said it this way before. Looking at other players' questions, there is far less investment. That's how I wanted to say it. Like for me personally, I think Vansco, you're probably looking at this the same way. Like you feel invested in your teams. These are players that you like. They've played great for you in the past, and you stick with them. Or you drafted them really high. They're not playing as great for the year. But you know, man, I drafted this guy like Allen Robinson. No, I drafted him high. He's going to turn it around. He's not turning it around right now. I mean, it's difficult to get away from those picks because there's value to these players when they're on your team. So this is a situation like the same thing with like a Myles Gaskin. I've played him in a couple of spots this year. I expected more from him. But when looking at these things from the outside in terms of when these lineup questions are asked and you just go through data and you take those 4 things that I always talk about, like a lot of times the answer that you find yourself on, for me personally, might be different than the answer that you already made. So if I set my lineups before we do these live streams, which I obviously try to, because if I don't, I'm probably not going to play well in my leagues. And I go through and someone asks a question about some sort of a similar situation that I have, I find myself looking at my own roster decision differently as a result, based on how I present the data to them, because again, there's not the same investment there. So there are a lot of times when I actually have started thinking to myself when I'm making my own roster decisions, like, how would I look at this if this wasn't my team? How would I evaluate this choice if I wasn't thinking about these are players that I've had before or that I've liked? And actually, that has really kind of changed sometimes some of the ways that I look at decisions. So there is some value even in my own personal leagues in the way that I've kind of discussed a lot of these decisions. And hopefully I feel like it's to the benefit of any of these decisions. I hope, like I always say, all we can do is make the best decisions. I always hope the information that we present helps you guys. And I also kind of hope that the information that I kind of pick up along the way helps me too, because I'm playing on a lot of these myself. So, it's not just the live stream, but obviously it does kind of change the way you look at things. So that's definitely a thought there, Vansco. And I feel like that's kind of where you're at. You say watching Tua Poach's 1-yard touchdown at the end of the game was soul crushing. Beginning of the season, one of the guys I talked about, I think it was the very first Sunday pregame of the year when I did Believe and Beware, was Miles Sanders. And I remember saying it was like an out of the blue. I had him in the Beware side. It wasn't anything against him, but my reasoning is that last year made me look differently at situations where you had a running quarterback and how does that impact the running back on that team. Because in a couple spots last year, I had drafted Kenyon Drake. And Kenyon Drake, you remember in last year's leagues, went relatively high. And I was extremely frustrated with that pick because I just didn't feel like he was returning the value that he needed to for where he was drafted. When looking back at that, what were the reasons for that? You look at the amount of touchdowns Kyler Murray scored on the ground, and you understand that a lot of them might have been goal line circumstances, that some of those teams with running quarterbacks, that's going to impact, even if you got a talented running back, that's going to impact their value. And that's the way I looked at Miles Sanders this year because of Jalen Hurts, that there simply could be a lot of times where the goal line situations, he's not going to get the touch that he otherwise would get. So yeah, Tua could be one of those guys. Josh Allen, we see like the run game in Buffalo has not been great for fantasy purposes in terms of the actual running backs. Like these are guys I look at. The situation with Kyler Murray, name other guys when they come through. Is Justin Fields could end up being that guy for Chicago somewhere down the road if he turns out to be a better player. It's something that Trey Lance in San Francisco, if he ever ends up being in that lineup. These are the kind of the little nuances that I've kind of been trying to pick up along the way. And that's kind of the way I look at certainly the situation. The running back situation in Philly is garbage right now, in my opinion. I just don't see that going anywhere. I don't know how you can trust anybody in that because they just don't seem to be favoring anybody in that lineup. But yeah, those are my thoughts, Vansco. Obviously, I had a little bit of a tangent there, but I think that you kind of got me started on that tangent with the different thoughts there. Bill, you said that you bet Vans, and I'm not sure what that means that you bet Vans, or you bet Vansco, perhaps. Vansco, you're the official Gaskin insider. That is a good Gaskin beat writer. That's good. You should get a Twitter handle, Vansco, something along the lines of Won't Start Gaskin, at Won't Start Gaskin on Twitter. That would be awesome. By the way, I haven't mentioned this in a while, but we do have a Twitter handle for those of you that are still watching live, or for those of you that are on replay. It is at the Fantasy Follow, and it's fantasy spelled FNTSY. So by all means, it's not, haven't used it quite as much, but because there just aren't as many people on there yet. Obviously, again, we're still a newish channel. But we would certainly, if we have more people on the Twitter, would use it more. But yeah, that's the situation. This has been the longest overtime we've ever had on the Sunday pregame show. We're almost at 2:00 already. This is pretty cool. All right, so let's do this. We're going to wrap up the stream. Is there anything that I need to re-hit that I haven't talked about yet? Let's take one last look at the games and what is going on right now around the league to see if there's anything not only for your guys' purposes, but I'm curious as well. Dallas now 14-3. Let's see who had the touchdown. It was Zeke had the rushing touchdown there in that game. So a nice game for Zeke. CeeDee Lamb up to 13.1 fantasy points already. 13.10 for the game. So a nice start for CeeDee Lamb. And Amari Cooper, interestingly, only one target so far in that game. And then Jacksonville has 6. Is that 2? That is a touchdown for Jamal Agnew. I'm guessing that they must have missed the extra point. And anything else changed since the last time we updated this game? I don't see. It looks like Washington may have had a touchdown, and it was Taylor Heineke with a touchdown pass to DeAndre Carter. Thanks, guys. What's the name of that show on That Helps No One? Great. DeAndre Carter gets the touchdown pass, not Terry McLaurin. Awesome. Can you tell who has Terry McLaurin going in different rosters right now? I'm sure some of you are in the same situation. Anyways, Vansco says, I'll try not to make the same mistake again. There are some weeks, Vansco, where he could have value still. I mean, the game against Houston was a good week for that. There could be others. He's not cuttable yet, unfortunately, which means you probably still have to have the possibility of playing him. I don't think he's cuttable. Perhaps he is for some. Bill Romanowski says, have a good week all. If you lose, it's just a game. Very nice. I like that, Bill. Again, we always like to say probably it's been close because we've had J.J. Watt and we've also had Trey Sermon here and there. And but still, I think the most famous viewer on the Fantasy Follow, NFL legend, Bill Romanowski. Always glad to have him with us. Good times. And that Sonic straw goes in the blooper reel. I actually do have some of my lemonade still left from my Sonic today. And so I'll have a chance to continue watching some games and probably finish that. But yeah, it's right here, somewhere over here. Where is it? There it is, right there. Sonic straw. You got to like it, right? Good stuff. All right, guys. Well, hey, appreciate everybody for being on the chats. Appreciate all you guys being with us during the show. And again, hopefully you're all off to a great start in week 10, looking towards a nice W to continue on your way as we move towards the fantasy football playoffs. Let me see one last chat here that I might have missed here. Vansco, he says, yeah, I was angry when Tua scored, but Gaskin cheered and was happy that his team won. Kind of puts fantasy in perspective. Good thoughts all the way around there. All right, this has been, I want to get all these chats in. Much love. Thanks, Vansco. Appreciate that. Same to all of you guys. Looking forward to some good action throughout the day today. Fantasy football. Hopefully, again, you're getting your way to those W's. But we move right along in week 10. And of course, it is some good football action all the way around to keep an eye on throughout the day. All right, that's going to do it for the TFF Live Sunday pregame show. We appreciate all of you for being with us. And we will say, as we always do, good luck in fantasy. We'll see you next time.